Sunday morning, 10:15, and we've got the police officers out the front. We'll see what they want. How you going? Just want to make sure we get. Just wonder what you guys can come on. I invite you on. Okay. So what's going on? What's?
You.
I'm Nick. Yeah, I'm Nick Bush. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. The reason we're here, it's basically down to the recent events in Christchurch with the shooting there, right?
Yeah.
Based on that, sort of a number of people have been identified who we've been tasked to go and speak to. So you're one of those people.
That was Nick Bush, also known as Napoleon Ardern, recording the police officers who visited his home following the March 15th terrorist attack in Christchurch. After that event, police compiled a list of over 100 people of interest, and it makes sense that on that list would be people who they believed held similar views to the alleged terrorist. For privacy and security reasons, media who have obtained a copy of that list haven't published it. We know Bush was on it because he told the internet all about it. The conservative right love to portray themselves as victims. It's a politically correct police state and they are the downtrodden fighters for common sense. Like most of these types, Bush doesn't describe his politics as alt-right or far-right. Have a look at this comment he left on the YouTube channel Cross the Rubicon.
In your day-to-day lives, please don't use the language of the left. Words or phrases like alt-right, far-right, we just can't use these, even to defend. Once we use their words, they gain the power of language. If you feel you have to use alt-right or far-right, use anything but these. Claim the power of language back.
You saw some of that conservative victimhood narrative in the first two parts of this series. In part one, we saw Kawasaki being flabbergasted that the Government Communications Security Bureau had linked the campaign against the UN Migration Compact, which she was a significant part of, to a group of Austrian neo-Nazis. And then in part two, we saw that people had started a petition calling on TV3 to sack Patrick Gower after he started reporting on white supremacy in New Zealand. That petition was started by people who are definitely not white supremacists, but for some reason are very angry about Patrick Gower reporting on white supremacists. The most egregious example of conservative victimhood might just be this Facebook post from one of the two organisations calling themselves the One New Zealand Party. In the post, which they had sponsored so that it would reach a wider audience, they claim that there are many people making comments about whether there is an element of fascism in the Ardern government. And later in the post state that, in some ways, the Ardern government and their media friends are fascists. Before going further and alleging that since the terrorist attack in Christchurch, the government have become terrorists themselves. Now, there may be legitimate criticisms to make of police actions following March 15th. It could be argued that, as New Zealand had never had a terrorist attack on this scale before, police were inexperienced at conducting an investigation in the aftermath. Perhaps showing up armed at the homes of conspiracy theorists around the country was overkill. On the other hand, the public don't yet know if the shooter had any contacts here. And if he did, we don't know how dangerous those people are. Since I released my last video essay, an active duty soldier who had been questioned by police after March 15th has been arrested and is now in military custody. He had been a member of the far-right bodybuilding group / monastic order Wargus Christi. At the time of filming, we don't yet know why he was arrested. We do know that he had access to military weapons, and that his arrest followed a joint Police and New Zealand Defence Force investigation. It's probably good that the police spoke to this person after the shooting. I can foresee a strange bedfellows type situation where both the left and the right are arguing against the state having more surveillance powers, although I don't yet see this happening. The New Zealand state actually has a lot of powers to surveil people already, thanks to legislation passed in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks in the United States. Those powers had previously been used to spy on Tino Rangatira activists as well as anarchists. That culminated in the raids of October 15th in 2007. The Security Intelligence Service had also been offering Muslim men money to spy on their mosques. But when it came to surveillance of the far right, arguably the New Zealand state just wasn't paying enough attention. It's likely a truism that state surveillance apparatus that in the past had been used primarily to spy on Maori, Muslims and sections of the far left has perhaps been turned towards the conservative and nationalist right. It's beyond the scope of this video essay, but I think there's a legitimate discussion to be had about how much of that state security apparatus should be dismantled and how much may be necessary for our safety and security. Let's check in on one of the groups I mentioned back in my very first video essay. Here's a clip to refresh your memory.
South Island Independence Movement, nominally a page for South Island Independence. The page is run by Solomon Torkelson. If you read Kirsty Johnson's investigative piece in the Herald in 2017 looking at New Zealand's alt-right, you may have heard that name. Torkelson rejects some of the labels associated with the movement, like racist and xenophobic, but otherwise openly described himself as part of the alt-right. He used to hang around in Facebook groups with names like Make New Zealand Great Again and Kiwis Against the Islamification of New Zealand. Oh, and he runs a youth centre in Timaru, but I'm sure that's nothing we should worry about.
Well, some people did worry. Andrew Falloon, who's the MP for Wangitata, the electorate that includes Timaru, spoke to the Otago Daily Times about his concerns with the content on the South Island Independence Movement Facebook page.
From what I've seen of the page, it uses what some would see as a legitimate position to host extreme views.
The Otago Daily Times reported that many comments on the page contained anti-Muslim or anti-immigrant sentiments, and also sought comment from Police Senior Sergeant Anthony Cullen.
Some of the comments posted on his page would cause concern, not only for police, but a significant amount of right-minded people.
And then Solomon Torkelson said,
Many comments are from disaffected people who feel their way of life is under threat. A threat they believe comes from many different directions, including immigrants, religious groups, and the government.
Followers of the South Island Independence Movement started to harass the journalist who wrote the article, causing her to briefly lock her Twitter account. They also succeeded in getting the Otago Daily Times to remove the article from their Facebook page, limiting the amount of people who would see it. They posted a screenshot of this exchange with the page administrator. The ODT stood by their article, but removed it from Facebook because they had no one to moderate comments overnight and they were starting to descend into abuse. But if you hear supporters of the South Island Independence Movement tell the story, they are the real victims of a lying mainstream media. I wouldn't be surprised if once the local alt-right discover this video, that comments will start appearing below demanding I show evidence of these abusive comments. While I was collecting screenshots though, I realised the Otago Daily Times is a reputable newspaper, not known for publishing falsehoods. So they're the only citation I need to provide here. Otherwise, I'm just buying into that alt-right narrative about the mainstream media being lying and fake news, and I'm not going to buy into that. If you've watched all 3 videos in this series, you may have noticed a thread running through all of them. The alt-right want you to distrust almost everyone. Media, politicians, academics, groups of people the average person is maybe a little sceptical of anyway. And it's when you distrust those people that they start telling their own stories. Stories about the Great Replacement or white genocide or the shadowy globalists who all happen to have Jewish surnames. I know that a substantial chunk of my audience is people who get here via alt-right social media. I see the pages linking to my videos and calling me a soy boy beta cuck or whatever, and I see the referrals coming from 4chan and before it was shut down even from 8chan. If you've found me via one of those channels, maybe just ask yourself, whose stories have you been listening to?
And I have seen what this kind of talk can do. I saw it in Berlin.
What were you doing there?
I was a professor at the university. I heard the same words we have heard today. But I was a fool then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid fanatics. But unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that they were not strong enough to conquer a unified country. So they split Germany into small groups. They used prejudice as a practical weapon to cripple the nation. Of course, that was not easy to do. They had to work hard to do it. You see, we human beings are not born with prejudices. Always they are made for us. Made by someone who wants something. Remember that when you hear this kind of talk. Somebody is going to get something out of it. And it isn't going to be you.